Welcome to the Monday Monologue. Well, we're stacking them deep, but we're not selling them cheap. And that gets to the subject of this week's Monday Monologue. What is value? And I think a lot of people have obviously different opinions on what is a good value. And in the audio world, there's price points all over the place. I mean, turntables. You can go get one for probably $150, maybe $200 on Amazon, and there'll be people that say you're not going to hear the difference between this and a $20,000 turntable. Now, on the other hand, I do think that there is a price point that you have to get beyond where you're not buying junk, and you're not going to be like rebuying the same thing over and over again in search of what you're really looking for. And I'm going to use a quick analogy. Most of y'all know that I'm into photography as well. Been into it since I was a teenager. Probably was more into it than I was audio gear for a long time. And I still love collecting vintage cameras. But in the 80s and 90s, I was really into shooting film and doing landscape photography, and then also doing like streetscape kind of photography. Not street photography of people, but just going out, walking around, looking for interesting things to photograph and trying to find a cool composition or image just in things out in the world. And was looking for the perfect camera for that. And I knew what the perfect camera really likely was, and it was a Leica M2 with a 35mm f2 or f1.5 something lens along that lines. But I didn't want to pay the money, and they're just overpriced for what they are, and saw images from them and knew they were really good, but I just couldn't pull the trigger on one. And so instead, I bought about probably 20 different rangefinders trying to get that experience from a cheaper camera, because I just didn't want to spend the money that a Leica cost at the time. And they're still really expensive, but at the time they were several $1,000s, and the lenses were a couple of $1,000s. I was just like, that's just way too much money to spend on a camera. Especially in 1980s dollars, that was a lot of money. And so I played around with Canons, and I played around with, old, the really old Leicas that were cheaper. And then I played around with some Nikons, and they were all nice cameras, but there was always one little niggling thing or another that just wasn't what I wanted. And then finally, I broke down and bought an M2 and went, OMG, why didn't I buy one of these 20 years ago? And even funnier thing, I love using these little wrist straps, and when I went to buy the wrist strap, I was like, now see how nice that one fits? Guess what? That's a Leica one. And yeah, it was $100 for this little piece of leather, and people would go, man, that's stupid. Why would you spend $100 for this little strap of leather? And it's because it fits and is made perfect. And I probably would have spent $200 on other wrist straps trying to get one that fit and was as comfortable and worked as good as this simple little one does. So I think kind of the moral of the story is sometimes we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot for not stepping up and just buying what we know we really want. And I'm not saying that you should really want this, but I guarantee you people are out there buying and rebuying these made in China amps or some other thing, trying to not spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a tube amp, and they're still not happy. When you think about it like that, the real value is going out and buying something quality right out of the gate. And again, I'm not saying buy my stuff. Go buy a deckware, or go, I've heard Prima Lumas are really good, or go buy a Macintosh. If that's what you really want, and that's what you want, just go buy one, and don't weasel around trying to not buy what you know is going to make your system what you really want. And again, this is a hobby. This isn't something that we need. This isn't like, I need a stove, or so you can cook dinner, or I need a new air conditioner, or some of these, I need a car for transportation. Some of these things we just can't live without. Nobody needs this stuff. We can all live without having audio gear, so this is definitely a luxury. This is definitely a first world problem that we're struggling over which amplifier to buy. But anyway, that's my little rant for the week. If I understand some people just don't have a couple of $1,000s to drop into an amplifier, and I'll say this, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I'll say it right now. If you're in a limited budget and you want a tube amp, go buy a Rysong A10 or A12, either one of those. I think the A10 is a little cheaper, but you have to do some extra wiring. And if you've never done any wiring before, don't do that. Just go buy an A12. Go watch my video. Go buy a soldering iron. Practice soldering on some stuff. And do my simple mods to that amplifier. And you're going to have a really decent sounding tube amp for under $600. And so don't expect to buy something like this for $1,200 when the parts are almost that much or close to it, and I'm not going to work and build these and make $4 an hour. That's the other thing too that I wanted to kind of go over. This is going to be super low production stuff. People are all worried about, oh, you're going to get overwhelmed and whatever. I'm not going to let myself get overwhelmed. I've sold the first batch of them already. It hadn't even been a week. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be able to sell however many of these I decide to make. Probably going to be 2 or 3 a month. And it's just not going to be something that I stress about. And I appreciate you folks that, signed up to buy this first batch of them. And I am planning on putting the BOM and the schematic and, some of that stuff out this week. And I am also going to start working on a video series on how to build one of these now that I've kind of figured out the best way to do the internal wiring. I didn't want to do a video series on this prototype when the wiring isn't optimal or the layout isn't optimal. And we've kind of gone over that. And I'm still fine-tuning a couple of resistor values. I'm still playing around with the cathode resistor on the driver tube. I think there's a little bit to be gained there still, but we're getting really close. And I've got some time waiting on these transformers. And this one's been sold to a good friend of mine who's my financial advisor. He wants me to come over and set up a system for him. And I think that may be more where this business ends up going, is being a consultant and going over and looking at people's houses, making recommendations, talking to them, trying to understand, like, what do you want out of this music system? And like he was saying, his wife's all excited about playing some vinyl. They have, dinner guest parties and stuff. They'd be nice to have some good music playing. He wants something like this too because it's kind of a showcase or a centerpiece or a conversation starter of something interesting that not everybody's got a tube amp in their house. And then the other thing is they want some nice, relaxing music time, kind of a meditative thing, and that's why I think a turntable's good for that, because you can really make a ritual out of listening to music. It's, it's kind of a hassle getting the record out, cleaning it, putting it on, putting the needle down. You're not going to just go and kind of have it as background music while you're doing other things. You're going to sit down and listen to it. You make an intentional kind of music listening session. But we're also going to put, like this one's got a switch here that was a pain, and we'll get into that when I do the build thing. I'm going to have to change the kind of wiring that I use on my signal path if I'm putting these switches in, because using those 2-wire, I call them double shielded kind of input signal wiring, you just can't do it with a switch. I did it on this one. I'll never do another one. But anyway, getting off track here. But got a switch here where turntable, streamer. Going to get in one of those blue Node, I think it is, streamers. And it doesn't need to be like the best DAC in the world and the infinite best sounding thing, because that's what they're going to use for background music. And they can be able to just pull up their phone, turn the amp on, turn the streamer on, flip the switch over to the streamer, get on their phone, find some music they like, and then, cook dinner and have some nice music playing in the house. And, it's going to blow away the little Amazon Echo or whatever they got, Bluetooth speaker thing they're using now. And it'll be just a nice, cool thing to have in their house. And so I really sat down and listened to them about what they wanted to do with the system. And thought about okay, what kind of sound pressure levels are they going to be wanting to listen at? And looked at the room. It's not a really big room. I know some RP600M speakers on a couple of stands put in the corners of the room are going to really sound great with this little amp. But, if they got a bigger room or they got some inefficient speakers or whatever, a tube amp may not be the right way to do the system. And I went over to another guy's house, he had some Magnapans and some, big high power solid state amplifiers, but he was looking for a little more warmth in his system, something like that. One of these color preamps driving his existing amplifiers probably is the way to go. And then maybe have a tube phono stage might be the way to go, and have that driving the solid state amp. And so tube amps aren't the answer to every question. And depending on the situation, there may be more budget-friendly solutions. And yeah, that's just kind of how it's going to roll, I think. And again, I'm not interested in hiring people to assemble these amps for me, because I'm building so many of them a month that I can't do them all. I could see, again, we've talked about this, finding a local fab shop, once I really nail down the chassis, taking one of them to a fab shop and say, what would you charge me to duplicate this? And maybe not have the tube ring holes drilled, because those are kind of a pain to get accurate enough to really get the tube ring centered. I can drill those, but if all the other holes were punched in it, that would speed things up a bunch, and then I'd be able to sell kits. And I think that would fill a void in this market for folks that, want this kind of quality, but they can't afford it, which is, it is what it is. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts for this week on where things are going. Obviously, come a little ways on this color preamp. And this was a prototype. I kind of screwed up, and I'll show you the video on this. I thought the power switch would look good here, and then when I stood back and looked at it, it was just like, ugh, that just doesn't look good. And honestly, I don't really like the way this little switch looks up here in the front or on the top. It messes up the symmetry of the amp, but I couldn't put it over here, and then I can't put it on the side because it's going to be over next to the phono stage, where his thing is going to have to sit right next to the amp. And then the turntable is going to be on the other side. And so there wasn't really anywhere. And I guess I probably maybe could have put it on the side. I don't know. It's too late. It's on the top. But anyway, that's why some of this stuff's prototype. Is sometimes you don't really know what it's going to look like until you do it, and then you go, ooh, yeah, that doesn't look too great. And again, like, I think this would probably look better on the side if you can get to it. But then it's over here where it could get damaged. So there's that. And then the toggle gets broken off and somebody's calling me up saying, yeah, the switch broke. Well, the switch didn't break. He broke it off. And I guess the other thing that I was going to talk about, several people have asked me, like, so what's your warranty going to be? And like, how are you going to stand behind your products that you sell to people? Well, first of all, I'm going to talk to everyone on the phone before I sell them one. And I'm going to make sure that it sounds like that it fits their use case. And they have realistic expectations about what this is. And then the tubes have a 90-day warranty. I can't warranty the tubes longer than like, the tube store does. Because then I'm just eating tubes. And there's not anything about this circuit that's going to make this amp eat tubes. I mean, I've been using this same pair of JJ EL34Ls in my 6SQ7 amp, and I listen to that amp a lot. And it's been fine. Same with the rectifier tube. Never had any. This amp isn't hard on rectifier tubes. And we're not running this driver tube hard enough for it to ever wear out. So I can't see the tubes ever having a problem. Hammond warranties the power transformers for a year. So I can do the same. If you buy one of these amps and within the first year something blows up, the power transformer blows up and Hammond replaces it, I'll install it for free. After that, you're paying for the parts. Irregardless, you're paying for the shipping. I can't afford to ship these things back and forth across the country. And none of the other people that are selling these China amps or whatever pay for shipping either. That's on you. And obviously, if the amp broke within like the first week, I'm going to take care of people. I'm not going to screw people over. But I can't afford to be shipping these things back and forth across the country either. But I'm going to stand behind these, and whatever parts tear up in them, if they ever do, if you pay for the parts, I'll replace the parts for free. I'm not going to charge you labor to repair one of my amps because I just don't see, they're so simple. I can't imagine there's anything in here that's going to be that hard to replace if some part does become problematic. Like if some batch of capacitors bad and they, one of the power caps starts going bad, or like I had with my 300B amp, that Soling cap went bad. They're not. It's like one bolt and two solder joints. There's nothing in here that's like really tedious to fix, and that's why I want to keep them like this. Like somebody wrote me about, well, I want to buy one of your amps, but I need 4 inputs. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. And like, if you need 4 inputs, it needs to be in a preamp that you're driving with this, and just buy one without the input, control, and use a preamp or a switcher box or whatever to do all these inputs that you want to put on it. And this was kind of a special case, and I may figure out a way to do this, DP-DT switch in the signal wiring where this was, it wasn't ideal. But I think I can figure out a way to do that. But this definitely adds a lot of complication. The volume control is pretty easy to wire in. This gets a little trickier. So if folks want one of these, I'm just going to have to charge people for my time. If they want 2 sets of RCA jacks with a switch, it's probably going to cost another $100 because that's the time it takes. Oh, and then back to hiring people to build these for me. Don't want to get into politics, but I'm a firm believer in a living wage, and I'm not going to hire employees and pay somebody, $8 or $10 an hour to work for me. I'm going to at least have a job for them where I know that I can pay them $15 or $20 an hour, and if I'm doing that, that's going to eat into a lot of the profits that this price point has built into it. And unless I had much bigger economy of scale on buying parts and transformers and all that stuff, and this iron, there's just not a big discount in it. I mean, it's, for what they are, they're fairly inexpensive, and I don't think there's a lot of profit margin in that where you could ever get to the point of getting them for like half price. It's not like resistors that have a huge markup, and when you buy like 100 resistors, you get them for, 30% of what you'd pay for if you bought 5 of them. And the same thing with like buying wire. You buy a 100-foot roll, you get a great deal. I mean, I went to buy the little skunky badges today. Well, this one doesn't have one. That one does. The little skunky badges today, restock up on those. And if I bought 10 of them, they were going to be $9 a piece. But if I bought 50 of them, they're $6 a piece. And so, most people would never need 50 of them. And so you never get to see that economy of scale. And so, there is going to be some savings for me on doing these things, but there's just so much labor in this, and it's got to be fun. I mean, the only reason that I've decided to do this is I just enjoy sitting down and building these things. I mean, it's fun for me just to sit and solder and drill and do stuff, for the whole afternoon. And so, as long as it's fun, I'm going to keep doing this. And luckily, setting up the LLC and all of that stuff wasn't a huge monetary investment. And honestly, even buying, enough stuff to build, 5 of these amps and 4 of those EAR 834 clones and a half a dozen of these color preamps, that's not a huge investment of money where if this just got no fun, then it wouldn't kill me just to say I'm not doing this anymore. So we'll just see where this goes. Anyway, once again, a lot longer video than I was expecting. I just looked over, it's over 20 minutes already. I've been rambling. So just wanted to kind of give y'all an update. I have been very busy trying to get like this first kind of order done for this guy, because that's going to really help me recoup a lot of my initial investment. And then, once I get through that, I want to get finished with the prototype of this color preamp, because I need one for my KT120 monoblocks. I don't have a way to control the volume on it other than that little, switcher shit box that they sell with a push button and the volume control, which is, it's okay. I mean, it does what it's supposed to. And honestly, if you want a volume control with 2 inputs, it's cheaper to buy one of those little shit audio boxes than it's going to be for me to put all this stuff in the amp. So if you're looking to save some money, that's what you need to be doing. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying my channel. I appreciate all you folks that have been longtime viewers, especially you Patreon folks. Really appreciate y'all's donations to my website. Also, you folks that just send me stuff. I've got, I can't thank these people enough that just send me circuit boards, or they send me albums, or they, just send me some capacitors. Somebody the other day sent me some capacitors because they had bought the wrong ones, and they were like, can you use these? And it's like, and they paid for the shipping to me. They didn't have to do that. I mean, I really do have the best viewers on YouTube. Y'all are just awesome. And yeah, there's a few nasty, rude people, but that's why YouTube has their little block user from channel button. And I use it a lot. So anyway, thanks again for all your support, and we'll see you for the next Monday Monologue.